My name is Rachel Shelmadine, and I would like to welcome you to my podcast, Moments in Motion, where I speak with creative leaders across all areas of the international design industry. And today I'm delighted to welcome my guest, Mel McVeigh. Mel is a true creative hybrid in that her 25-year career has spanned most areas of the creative world, with a very strong theme of visual and digital storytelling throughout all of it. She is a creative director, a published photographer, and the founder of the Wide Open Road Studio. She's also an avid traveler, and her love of exploring, in particular of Spain, has been a lifelong inspiration for her, both personally and throughout her work. Welcome, Mel McVeigh, to Moments in Motion. So it's really lovely to see you.
Lovely to see
How are you?
I'm really well. Very good.
And where are you? Because you're a big traveller. So where are you at the moment?
Currently in my home in London.
Good. Yeah. And just to place you, so you came to the UK quite a while ago.
Yeah, so I'm Australian by birth, but I'm technically half English. My mother is English. My father is Australian.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I moved to the UK 18 years ago, and 2 years and then never left.
But you go back quite a bit, don't you? You go back when you can.
Oh, I go back at least once a year. Well, now
Yeah.
I'm a big part of my world. My family's back there. But if I could, I would go back once or twice or follow the sun. That's the new goal.
And just tell me the story again, because when I first met you, you told me what brought you, what was the catalyst for making you leave Australia? Because if I remember, you're from Melbourne, aren't you? You were growing up in Melbourne, in the suburbs.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the story, but I had always, and I think increasingly now that I've been here longer, the context was I always wanted to live in Spain. And actually, when we moved here with my family at the time, it was easier to work and live in London because I had the passport and it allowed for visas and obviously same language. But I, as a teenager, had got obsessed with Spanish cinema and Almodovar, so I wanted to move here. But increasingly,
there was a film in particular, wasn't there, that you said had just
Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown.
Yeah, amazing film, crazy film.
But increasingly as I've got a bit older, like it's also, I think I'm embracing my English heritage more. So Europe in all of its entirety was the draw.
Yes.
And for reasons I find it really hard to go home. And when people say, why don't you go back? Which I really do want to. I'm like, but it's very hard to give up being in Paris one weekend, Madrid the next, Galicia the next. And, that to having Europe at your doorstep is just very enticing.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because it's just, if you're in London, in an hour or so, you can be in totally different culture. It's amazing. And I mean, I've never been to Australia. I got headhunted many years ago for a job that was based between Sydney and Perth. But when push came to shove, it was just so far away from, like you, I love being able to travel to Europe.
Yeah, but it's sort of I find when it's almost like I shed one persona and create another one as I fly. And it actually I hit Asia, because there's nothing more amazing when you kind of go through or land in Asia and then you come out the other end. I'm so used to it, a long bus trip for me. But I mean, almost anyone that I know goes, oh my God, it's 24 hours. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's just a day. But I've done it so often and often, the shortest trip I've ever done, I think, is 7 days. But like, I'm so familiar with it. But I also like it because I know that when you have, the map that you have and you get the plane as it goes across.
I love that. Yeah.
I kind of hits Darwin and you still know you have 5 hours to go. But just,
I wouldn't love that.
If you're flying and it's daylight, which is not often the case, but if I've done a daylight flight, I just feel, that landscape of going home. And that's really important.
Yeah. So let's go into your moments in motion, but I want to ask you a few questions beforehand. The question I want to ask you first, Mel, is what piece of music, above all else, sums you up? What would you leave as your legacy piece of music?
Oh, I don't know if I would leave my legacy. I'd have to answer that with two, because if I was my legacy, everyone that knows me would, blare Ricky Martin from the speakers and then just shake their head with like, I can't believe she loves that music. Uh, that would be the longevity, it would have to be that, actually, because anything to do with Ricky Martin, I've seen him on, like, I think 4 continents around the world. But the other one, which is really like resonates with me, is an Australian song by the Triffids called Wide Open Road. I played it a lot when I was in Spain, because it just has this feeling of just being on the road and traveling. Yeah. And I truly believe Australian music for me has a really strong sense of the landscape. It feels warm. It's almost like you can feel the grit and the wind and the sound that you don't get in other. So if I ever get homesick, I just put Australian music on. And there's no defining song, but Crowded House would be the other one as a band.
That's what I always think of, because I used to love Crowded House, and nothing, of course, with them being Australian, just love their sound.
Well, they're only Australian, right? Neil Finn's Kiwi, but yes, the rest were Aussies.
Oh, okay.
And but Crowded House is probably from my teenage years. Ricky Martin, it's just a random thing that I'm obsessed with. But I also just love seeing him in different countries. But yeah, Wide Open Road, I think, in the reverse of, like, when I was homesick, I listened to that.
Yeah. Okay, and I just have another little question. So, because you're a photographer, you've published a book of photographs, and I often see your photographic projects on LinkedIn. And I know it's a passion of yours, and you've had that a long time. But if you could photograph anyone and you had access to anyone, let's say, for a 24-hour period, who would you love to photograph?
Oh, I've never been asked that question before. Do you know what? This is sound weird, because I do a lot of portraiture. I'd love to go back in time and photograph my parents more.
Oh yeah,
like
that'd be lovely.
And the reason, and so I've never been asked that question, and of course I could say a celeb and a variety of different things, but actually I have very few photographs with my parents. I did a lot when I was older and after I had my son, but there are almost no photographs of my family together. There's only 4 actually of my dad and my sister and I. There's only 4 photographs in existence of our entire life.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, particularly also as they grew up, and when I became a photographer, if I'd photographed them sort of with more intent, I wish I could do that.
Yes, I'm the same. I've got hardly any photographs of my parents, and both of them are dead. Like you, I haven't got the opportunity to take any photos of them, and I've got hardly any. And it's strange, because my father was a really keen photographer, but he took photos of places, never people. So he didn't take any photos of himself and my mom. It's of where they were, and they traveled the world. So I've got, lots of pictures of amazing places, but they're not in it.
Yeah, I have a lot with my dad. I have very little with my mum.
Yeah.
And, but with my son, and my art teacher, actually, when I was studying photography, just said, it's a very common thing that children aren't often, well, this is back in the day when you had film, right? And not now.
Yes. Yeah.
Children are with their mums, because it was always the mum behind the camera. So actually, if I was all the photographs with my dad, she's more than likely taking them. Not always, but a portion. And so when I had my son, and again, I probably would photograph him differently now too, because there was a lot of stage at the beginning, and then he got resistant to it. But I take a significant amount of photos of the 2 of us, so that he has this record of, the 2 of us throughout. And he gets obsessed with it, because I want that photo from when I was 12, like, he'll remember it. So I know that it has meaning and memory to him, which is why I know I would love to go back, and I wish I had the same thing to look back on now that they've both passed away.
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, so before we go into your moments in motion, what motivated you to move towards creativity? Was it always there in your life?
I think it was always there. I think I was always into art and making things. And actually how I got into photography was and maybe part of the reason why I struggled with it as well, is that I was bullied when I was in high school. And actually, to keep me kind of, that sounds weird, but kind of away from all the stuff that was happening, one of the teachers said, oh, in the dark room, you could kind of, not that you could hide, that sounds wrong, but like, you've got this creative spark, you know, we can teach you photography. And so I taught myself photography at school as a way of dealing with sort of bullying at lunchtime. So I didn't have to be around, or at least that's how I've told myself that story. But I spent a significant amount of time in the darkroom. I did a photographic in year 12 when most people did painting. And so it wasn't like I have to be a photographer, but it was always a craft that I was interested in.
Yeah.
And over time, everything to do, like in terms of career, I kind of fell into it. And so I didn't say I have to be X or I have to be Y. I had visions of that. Like I wanted to shoot a cover of Vogue, and I didn't do that, but I did work for Vogue. So it's like, that's how I got into it. But then it became, which is probably also why I use it a lot now when I'm needing space or I need to process something. So it probably doesn't matter for the fact that I would do that at high school. But but I've done theatre. Like I'm I'm both a hybrid and a polymath. Like I spent most of my
you definitely are
doing theatre and directing, which actually now is becoming more and more a skill that I am leaning into. You know, I've done magazines. I've moved across different spectrums and just picked up when I went, oh, this is cool. Let's try X. Even like designing, you know, newspapers and magazines. That's how that started at university. Oh, we have to do the student newspaper. Okay, well, let's work out how to do it. Oh, there's this thing called a computer and PageMaker. Let's play with that. So,
PageMaker. I remember that. Yeah.
Couldn't afford Quark, but yeah.
Okay, that just gives me some context then. So let's lead into your first moment that you decided on, where you were traveling along in one way and something happened which might have tipped you completely in a different direction, or has diverted you, or something's happened that's unexpected.
Yeah. I have thought about this question a lot. And as a traveler, and I think this is kind of really key, is that no journey is ever meant to be straight. And so I know that there were either forks in the road or moments where something happened, that a shift occurred. But if I was to reflect, and I suppose this is the point of this, right? Like everything that I kind of wanted, I've achieved. It's just that it didn't happen in the order I expected. And so therefore, you know, I was thinking about, you know, sometimes these things are better understood in reverse when you kind of see them as they come, you know, time to reflect. So to answer that question, the first one was when I lost my job 2 years ago. And the reason for that was, in terms of the impact that that had on me, is that I thought that I was in a position where I didn't identify myself by my career. And at that time, I don't think I did. But the recovery from that episode took longer than expected. And I suppose the context for that is that, you know, I'd been working in a job for 5 years. I had actually.
Can you say who? Are you happy to say?
Yeah. So I've been working for Condé for 5 years, and Condé Nast. So, and I really enjoyed that job. It formed a part of my sort of career and identity and helped me get through COVID. And when both my parents died, they were extraordinary. So, and even though I actually wanted to leave and it was the right move, right, in retrospect, having that kind of a breakup was devastating, because I wasn't prepared for it as I thought. I don't think I was emotionally as strong. Why that was such a moment, like that's a thing that happens in business. Like, you know, they did what they needed to do. And also I know that they kind of, I felt in retrospect, they did it for the right reasons. And it was nothing to do with performance. It was all to do with, you know, consolidating team and leadership into New York. And so, but what it did was, it was a confluence of where my kind of life blew up, and why it was such a challenge was that a year later, you know, I think everyone just assumed I would get work. And I didn't. And so I did have a tiny bit of work, but the massive sort of shift was, I got to a point this year where I nearly had to sell my house because I didn't have enough money. And that's why I chose it, because not many people know that. Friends do, But
Yes.
in the smoke and mirrors of life, I spent 6 months living with friends while my house was rented out. I
Yeah.
really struggled to get work. I was at the top of my game, right? I had the career, I had the job title, I had all the skills, but I don't know whether it was an element of ageism. I mean, it was partly because I couldn't sell myself at that time, but I had to fundamentally dig extraordinarily deep as to who I was and what I want and who I wanted to be, particularly given that I'm now, 50 plus and, time is limited, right? So I think that that moment in retrospect was the best thing that has happened. One of the best things that's happened to me, but it was incredibly destabilizing, you know, at that time. And to think that all the things that I had achieved or built up for, I owned my house on my own. I, had a really good job, and all of that just went away. And to get to the point where I thought I'd sell up, complete failure, really shook the foundations of who I was. And so the rebuild is actually more rooted and grounded now. I
Yeah.
never do that again. But I don't think anyone thought, including myself, that it would take me 18 months to get back on my feet. And I thought it would take 18 months. And that's what it took 18 months to get back on my feet. And no matter what redundancy you get or what payout you get, that is a very long time to have sustainable income.
Yes. Yes, I remember that so well because you got in touch with me the day you found out, and it had been on the back of such an intense couple of years for you. But looking at where you are now and just everything about you, I really do think I'd agree with you, it was the best thing that happened to you. But yes, I can see that you had to dig really, really deep to be able to get through that period of uncertainty. I think you thought that it would be much, much quicker and much easier to be able to
Yeah.
walk into something and to have choice.
Yeah. I think that the big thing about that moment is I felt I was beginning to feel I had no choice, and I had never had
Yes.
in my
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, like, but I can only reflect on that now for two reasons. One, because life
Yeah.
is really,
Yeah.
and two, I did a lot of the work that was needed. If you'd asked me 12 months ago, it'd be a completely different kind of story. And it allowed me to kind of reflect and rebuild. But yeah, I just think that at the same time, people underestimate what redundancies do, because I've had a lot of people made redundant in my network in the last year, what it does
Yes.
for
Yes. Yeah, me
age,
too.
how
Mm.
old you are, etc. And so I'm very mindful of that. And also, like, wanted to, my time at Condé was glorious for a variety of different reasons. And
Mm.
I also wanted to leave, and I also had been looking for work. It's just, I think, the shock of when it occurred, how it occurred, and just some of the mechanics of it, I think could have been handled better. But I think that it was, at 12 months later where I was really struggling to pay the rent, which I never
Mm.
thought I'd be in a position to do. And I couldn't get a job interview. And I was
Mm.
told I'm not qualified when I could have walked into, like, 12 months prior, any job was, as I said, destabilizing. But what it was perfect was that it forced me to remove every barrier that I had. And I had an extraordinary friend network. So the beauty of it was how I was lifted up. I had to basically seek help when I don't normally seek help. And my friends, a lot of people in my professional network, even people who didn't realize how the situation was, were just doing little things that kind of helped me rebuild. Now it's kind of the reverse problem, but in a good way, as in my business is growing and I feel back to who I am, but I'm actually a completely different person.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that was the lesson, very long lesson, but that was the lesson and the gift, was that I got to remove things that were no longer of service to me. Because I
Yeah.
kind of had these distractions, right? And
Yeah.
now I'm way more centered. I mean, obviously it might happen again, but I'm very clear about that never happening again. It's not the first time I've had a major kind of career rumble. I'm not even clear about change, but that one, I suppose it also was because it was so recent, and it also was off the back of both my parents dying.
Yeah.
Well, grief just is not a fun thing to do.
No, we were talking through that, and it was your father getting ill first of all, wasn't it? And it was just then it seemed then you had stepped into this really intense time, because then going through that, and your father passing, then your mum was ill, and going backwards and forwards to Australia.
Yeah. I mean, that does make the distance really far. But again, I was
Yeah,
really, really looked after. At that time, Condé let me do what I needed to do about
yeah,
my parents, and I will be forever grateful for the leadership team for that. And some of these things are timing, right? I had
yeah,
reached the end of life, and in terms of career, but even though it took a long time, I did have the resilience to get through it. It just took about 6 months longer than I would have thought was what was reasonable. But
yeah,
I think to learn how to articulate who I was and who I wanted to be. I actually think about life now in chapters. So this was very much, and that was very much an end of a very specific chapter in my life. And so
mm,
actually, to an extent, given the gift of time to really work out what this new chapter needed and wanted to be, because it's a chapter where, age is a question, and how I want to be, what kind of longevity approach do I want to have to the next
yes,
decades? That never was a question. It is now.
yeah.
And I have the luxury of time to being able to address that. So see it as a plus now, but only in hindsight.
Yes, that's the thing. And we've talked about that. The lessons you get when you look back are huge, and you can see those shifts. And when you're going through that trauma, it's giving you something that you require, but you don't feel it at the time because it's coming at you and you're in react mode. We've talked about this a few times, that if only you could get to a point where you don't have to require hindsight, that you could respond to that as it happens. I mean, I know you've done loads of work on that, that as something happens which seems really bad, you kind of click into that learning mode rather than having to rely on looking back on it.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard because, of course, you're having to juggle and deal with so many things that it's definitely a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that the benefit of being a traveler, I suppose, is I can deal with an element of ambiguity more
Yes.
than others, because I can get on a plane and not know where I'm going, and
Yeah.
that those things are fine too when you have backup, either financial backup or your health
Yes.
network. I'm very lucky and fortunate to have those things, and I suppose
Yeah.
the real stress came in when it was a financial stress, right? Like
Yeah.
thinking about how I was going to cover the mortgage. And to be, open and honest too, this is very, middle class kind of question. I say this, I'm very blessed to have a home, right? Others don't. But at the
Mm.
same time, it is things that you've built up in your life, when they start to go away,
Yeah.
you question A, their value, but B, how do you want to live if those things don't exist?
Yeah, exactly. So you're doing the journey backwards. Everyone's done it the other way so far. So that's interesting. So, of course, I knew you'd do it differently. So what's your next moment going back from that?
Oh no, I was actually going to go the first one as I was telling that story to try and complement it with a.
Okay, you're gonna do a big jump.
Well, only because I was thinking about what's the not the opposite version of that story. Another, because I really did reflect on whether I don't want them to be career related, right? And while that one was a Condé kind of thing, I was thinking about life moments as opposed to career
Yeah.
and the next one is basically how my child appeared, which is not really how my child appeared, but I had always wanted to live in the UK, and in my 20s I had moved here, and so that was in the early
Yeah.
90s, and that was I mean, I had a partner at the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I finished university and up I go. And so I sold everything, which I do a lot. I sold everything that I owned I mean, I worked 3 jobs. I spent a year and a half, which just looks ludicrous now in terms of the jobs that I had, because I was so determined to like move to the UK or move
Mm,
to Spain and kind of live that life.
mm,
And so I left in my in my early 20s, and I only lasted about 4 months because, one, I got extraordinarily homesick. I had my
did
great
you? Okay.
before sunrise kind of experience, but
Mm,
and I was in a relationship at the time, and then that ended, and so forth. And the reason why, regardless of all that kind of history, which I won't go into, that person ended up becoming my husband, because after
yeah.
about 5 months or 4 months, I was like so homesick that I went home. I never made it to Spain because at that time I did not have a British passport. I had residency
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
UK, but it meant that I couldn't work in Europe. So because I had tried to be an exchange student in Spain, I had tried all these and I'd never been able to make it happen. And so I was working in the UK and I really did not enjoy it. It's probably because I came in November and it's just, as an Australian, like the disconnect of like culture.
Yeah. The grayness, the damp. Yeah.
So I
the
left,
lack of light.
probably didn't make the summer. So I left in probably the May. And anyway, I went back because I thought, relationship, boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. We broke up straight away. And then for about 4 or 5 months, it was just back and forth and that kind of 20 something kind of stuff. Anyway, about 5 months later, we were out one night and he said, this is going to be strange, but let's not get back together. We'll just get married. And I'm like, why would we do that? Like, why would we not just get back together? And he was like, well, there's no point. I love you. We might as well get married. And so we did. Took us about 2 years. Best day of my life. But actually, about a year later, we got pregnant and we just bought a house. And so, and I had never expected to have children that young. And I had like...
How old were you at that stage?
26. He was born when I was 27. So we were going to get married. We were going to be in our house for a couple of years. We were going to, travel, work, build our careers, etc. And kind of the energy thing also through a grief. His mother died. And his mother had always wanted a grandchild. And so, the mythology, and I really believe in it, is she had imagined us having children. And hint is conceived on the day that she passed away. There's definitely an energy by which we were gifted our son.
Yes.
That just changed the course of sort of life and career, right? And we actually hadn't even moved into the house before we settled on the house and we moved in. The guys were like, you're in this really funky warehouse. It's not designed for a child. And we're like, yeah, I know that. But anyway, here he comes. And I can't imagine a world without him. I mean, he's 24, nearly 25 now. And he changed my entire life because we became a family really early on. We were the second in our group of friends to have kids. Most of our kids had 7 or 8 years later. So we then needed to have the money and not the infrastructure, but all the things that go with, having a child. And that wasn't the plan for both of us. And I don't think either or all three of us now wouldn't think of any other way of living and being. So that was just because I got on a plane and came home because I was homesick. And the sequence of events led to this beautiful marriage for 20 years and a awesome human being that is the best of the two of us, which is amazing.
Well, as you know, I'm a fatalist because we've talked about this. So I think probably the reason why you couldn't get into Spain and make that dream work at that stage is because you had to go back home to have your son. Definitely.
Yeah, and he brings me joy, even though he's based now in Oz. He brings me joy every day. Right. And to have been able to have raised him he spent 10 years in the UK and we did move back here. And I was working at the time, I had started a contract at Lonely Planet and then I got pregnant and I went, oh, that's a bit of a problem. What am I going to do now? Because I wouldn't have had maternity leave and they had offered me a full-time job. And I said, okay, I'm happy to take the full-time job, but I have full disclosure. Like I was very early on, so I definitely wasn't showing. And they, again, a brilliant, amazing company said, cool, don't worry, you'll get maternity leave. And I'm like, I won't be a year in. They said, doesn't matter. We want you. So I worked with Lonely Planet on and off for 8 years. Again, an incredible part of my life and journey. I had 2 incredible bosses, 3 in fact at that time. But yeah, they also looked after me and, kind of gave us the confidence that we could afford to have a child.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it? When you look back, everything just sort of slots into place, doesn't it?
Well, I think that, those kind of moments where you think it takes you off the path, puts you actually on the path that you were meant to be. I love that I'm still friends with many of them, right? And they've helped, a true community for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really nice moment. I like the unexpected part as well. And I like the fact that you think that Griff's dad's mum gifted you to have a child. Because I feel the same with my mum, because my mum died, and I got pregnant with my son almost at identical time. And I always, because her last conversations with me before she got too ill were her just saying, have a child. I was like, I don't want a child. I want to travel. And she was like, have a child. You know, the love is so special. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure it is, but I want to travel. So I always think that she gifted me my
Yeah,
son.
100% gifted. I mean, she wrote it in her diary before she was too sick, and
Yeah.
kind of described him. And there's definitely a spiritual aspect to
Yeah.
that. And I mean, from the moment he came out, he was laughing too. So he also brought an incredible, and still does, energy and sort of perspective on the world. And I'm increasingly learning more from him.
Mm,
He becomes he's always been his own person, but as he now becomes an adult and matures and reflects on things, like we
mm,
had incredible conversations about, I don't know, life, how to live,
mm.
romance, like just everything. So he's come out good. But also who I am has been strongly informed by, also my relationship with him.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% with that, because I never ever I mean, you obviously had a plan that you wanted to be a mum at some point.
I'd said I wanted 5 kids, and then there was no kids. I just kept changing my mind. We settled
So
on
I
one.
definitely wanted no kids. I just wanted to travel. I just wanted to, complete freedom. And like I said, I think my mum put the kibosh on that, but I'm so glad, because like you, my son has taught me more about life and about myself than anyone else. I mean, just incredible. And I never ever would have thought that I would have had the kind of relationship, that I have with my son. I never daydreamed about having children. I never wanted to get married. It was so not on my horizon. But he's taught me so much, and we have such incredible conversations about life. He's into quantum physics. We talk about reality, the nature of reality. We've been doing that since he was tiny. And he's taught me so much. I learned quantum physics from him when he was about 7. I don't understand what you're telling me. Tell me again. But they teach you so much. They put you under pressure, and they give you so much love, and the two combined is the biggest learning, isn't it, that you can ever have?
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. Okay, that's lovely. So are we going to jump in the middle now?
Yeah, well, because it has to end with your first question, right? Did I ever make it to Spain? Which I did. So,
Okay, yeah.
and I get like that, not by osmosis, because before I get to that story, like even with Conde, and I had to kind of think what next. So I was like, I've actually done
Mm,
everything I wanted. So
yeah.
like I kind of ticked all the boxes of the things that if my 20-year-old self, what I wanted to achieve. So
Yes.
the middle bit was that when Griffin, and it was again, it was all combined with identity. So while I was in one job that was super high powered and it just kind of imploded for a variety of reasons. But at this
Mm,
period also happened at the same time that Griffin went home. I'd been looking after him. My partner and I had separated, and then I did 5 years in London as a single mum, and with a great
mm,
community around me, and amazing share household, and Griffin, took some time to adjust, but did, and it's all
mm,
kind of worked out in the end. But when he left, my identity as a mother kind of got blown up. And at the same
mm,
time, I also had limitless freedom because I was all of a sudden, I could do whatever I wanted. And so when I left the job and I went on a
mm,
walkabout, packed up my rental that I was in. I put everything in storage, thinking it was for 3 months. And all my friends said, "You've been talking about this Almodovar story since you were 16. If you don't go now,
mm.
just shut up." I did, and I was kind of like sussing it out. So I'd often spend like a month down there and then come back, or I'd
Where did you start out? Which bit of Spain did you choose first?
well, actually, I mean, the story goes back from when I was 16, and I just obviously didn't pay that much attention because the film is set in Madrid. But
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s, I actually thought it was Barcelona I wanted to move to. I don't know why, because actually
Mm,
I went to Madrid once in the 90s.
mm,
Uh, uh, Also very connected. It's always been a vortex of energy for me, that city, but didn't go
mm,
back for like a long time. And then like a significantly long time. And then I
mm.
day was like trying to get to Barcelona and the flights were too expensive. So I'll bugger it. I'll go to Madrid. And then when I got off the plane at Madrid that time, I went, oh my God, I'm home. And I cannot describe you the feeling that city provides. Like people always ask me, you know, where's your home? And I'm like, well, actually, technically I have 3 now. I mean, obviously Melbourne, because it's where I'm from, London, I've been for 18 years, but actually Madrid is a space that I have always, and I have not a single Spanish, like bone, history, lineage in my body at all. So for the first kind of 8 months, I was commuting. So the goal was to work in London, and it took me 7 months to find a new job. And the job that I found was Condé Nast. But I was able to roam, and it was a beautiful summer, and I got to really think about that chapter because I went, and this is why I think it's all about thinking about life in chapters, is that chapter when Griffin left was the family role kind of shifted, never stopped, but it fundamentally shifted. But then it became, okay, well, I'm single. I can do what I want. I can kind of change how I think about the world. So I started commuting, going back and forth, trying to get London. Even though I speak enough Spanish, I'm not fluent. But this is like a 2 or 3 year journey in terms of when I then found the new job with Condé Nast, which was extraordinary. I was contract for a year and I was commuting. I basically said, I don't want to work full time. I want to be able to work 4 days a week so I can do my creative side. And I also, you know, I spend a lot of time in Spain, and this is like pre-Brexit, so I could come and go, etc. And then about a year in, my boss said, you have to go perm, like if we're going to continue working together. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to, but fine. This is what I want to do. And I also kind of came home, and it was the summer, and I went back. And I said to him, that's okay, but I still want to be able to commute. He said, that's fine. And so I finally rented an apartment for 3 months in Madrid. And why that's really important is that I signed a contract in the November, and in the February, COVID hit. And
I remember,
when
I remember talking to you, and you were in that beautiful apartment.
So what actually happened was that when this was all happening, I was in Madrid. I was doing like 3 days in London and coming back for the weekend, and I'd rented a long-term apartment. So when the country got closed, the only people who stayed, because all the foreigners and expats had to leave, were people who were Spanish, or you had a lease, right? And I had a lease. And so I rang my boss and I said, what should I do? And he said, I think you should miss the flight because you can't come into the office. You'll need to do 14-day quarantine. I missed the flight. And that allowed me to live my childhood dream of spending 18 months in Madrid.
You had a good lockdown experience, definitely. I remember you being in that beautiful apartment.
It's actually like all the apartments in the Almodovar films. So if you've ever actually seen Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, she has a
long time ago.
And it has all the plants, and she's watering the plants, and it's all the conversations of her looking down the street. My apartment in Madrid was that. So I have like an Almodovar women's group, because everyone knows that I literally got to live the movie that I wanted when I was 16. So I was edging towards that decision, and I had tried numerous times in my life to kind of get there, but to spend that 2 years in Madrid was just extraordinary. So that was a really pivotal moment, right? It was about 18 months, 2 years, but I was on and off years. So after when my marriage ended, I actually, every time that my ex would like my son would go spend time with him, the first thing was get on a plane and go to Spain. And so my journey there, and when I worked in Paris, I got really close with the Spanish team. And so a lot of my friends down there are connected to that world when I worked in Paris for 18 months. So it's like the universe kept swirling me around.
Yes.
Kind of landed enough. But what I imagined it to be is nothing to do with the experience. Although that's my richness and my appreciation of the culture of all the different cultures in Spain, and and territories and people within Spain. So I feel blessed, right? I now have, I think in my mind, I'm going to live in Madrid and have all these amazing friends that probably would fit an Almodovar dining table in terms of the kind of characters. I just feel like of all the things that I wanted, never thought I was going to get there. I was given it as a gift, but in a very roundabout way.
So with these three different locations that have this pull on you for different reasons, where do you think you will settle? Or do you think you will always have this triangle kind of life of going between the three? If you had to pick one, could you?
No, not yet.
No.
The reason I say that is with the fact that the last kind of 12 months, if I get stuck in one place, the persona of that place starts to take over. And so, like, I am fundamentally the same person, but how I, my community in Melbourne versus Madrid, and how I, interact is ostensibly the same, but actually they provide me with very different things. And I was in Galicia for the weekend, and again, just landing in Galicia and getting the car, and I played Wide Open Road and my project's on eucalyptus. So it's all connected. But actually part of the reason I'm doing this project is what is it to be rooted in a culture that isn't actually yours, right? But also to feel very centered and at home in that space. But I know kind of for who I am as a person, those three locations are kind of where I belong. And while then I want to build a life that allows for all three. The only thing that might shift is my health would be one variable. And the other one is my son, right? Like in terms of where he chooses to take his next chapter, and if he chooses to have a family and all those things, that will change the ingredients of that answer to that question. But for now, it's for this chapter, however long it is, it's a combination of the three.
Yeah, I really relate to that because I'm between two, not three. I was born in Malta, and I even though I've been there, I don't feel any affinity there. I do to Ireland, maybe because both my parents are Irish, and like you, well, I'm a mix of Irish and Scottish and Greek. And I do have a real affinity with Ireland, and I lived there, and I've always had this love affair with Ireland, but I've always wanted to find a home because I lived all over the place because my father worked for oil companies, so we were always traveling, was always on a plane from being a baby. I love the land in England, where I live in Dorset, and I love the humour and the richness of the history, so that has a real pull on me. But I don't feel at home in England at all, never have done. And whenever things have got bad in my life, I get on a plane and I go to somewhere else. Like you with Madrid, mine is Italy, and specifically Venice. I felt that when I got off the train and came out of the station and was going there just for a holiday, just as a tourist. And I just said to my son, I'm home. I found it at last. Because I thought I would never find a place where I really felt this huge feeling of belonging, like you talked about Madrid. It feels like home, and I've been there loads of times and I expect it to go away. But the moment I step foot on it or get in a boat, just feel at home. And I totally understand what you say. Different locations bring out different sides of you, because I'm a totally different person when I'm in Venice. Like all the stress, all the self-consciousness just evaporates, and I kind of melt into the place. So
it's nice, right? Like the ability, you're very blessed if you can absorb and live and inhabit other spaces. And my actual relationship with Madrid has changed between the kind of this young person's view that's really based on cinema, then having a wild and chaotic time as I was sorting out certain things in that chapter. But I recently had a wedding there with my friends, and it's just very different. But that's because I'm different. It actually had a completely different feeling again. But so is my relationship with the UK. Like I've done very little travel in the UK, much to the chagrin of my family and my English friends. And then, London is a home, but if there's one I would be here. I just think that, all I'd have to move. But because I'm working a little bit at the moment outside of London, and one of those places is Norwich, which is actually where my mother's family is from. It's really interesting going there because
It's so strange, isn't it? Again, fate stepping in and pulling you because you wouldn't think to go there. It's not a place it's not a tourist place. It's nothing normally that would draw you unless you needed to.
And
It's funny, your mum's family are from there.
my mum's side is from
Yeah.
and I think I'm being sort of asked, this would be the happiness of my aunt and uncle and stuff, that embracing that, I mean, I'm never going to say that outwardly that I'm English, but I am saying more frequently that I'm half.
Mm,
You know, because my mother is and was and always will be English. And so a lot of this
mm.
I grew up with actually in Australia is incredibly, you know, English culture and traveling to Bali.
Yes, Melbourne is meant to be one of the most, isn't it? One of the most English.
Oh, it's not so much the spaces, it's more the way she cooked and what we ate and all the
Okay.
rituals we had. And I never drank, you know, coffee as a child. It was always tea and it was endless cups of tea. And it's just like all those things that just are so
Yeah.
innately English,
Yes.
or at least for me they were and are. But yeah, I get a sense of that space. It's not, it's of the three, it would be third. No, to anyone English, I apologize. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm an Australian, and then you know, like Spain is and it's other parts of Spain too. Galicia is providing me, which is sort of odd because it's the same weather as the UK, right? But actually, because it's Galicia, it's fine. It's okay for me to be there in the wet. I was there on the weekend, and it's pouring with rain. I was quite happy. Pouring with rain out there in my
Well,
rain.
it's different. It's because I lived in Siena and it rained a lot. You know, I was there all through autumn and winter, and it rains a lot, but it's different. It's just different. I was fine with the rain in Tuscany, but it drives me insane here.
It cost £20 to have a glass of wine. It cost €3.
Yeah, that helped. Yeah. I
Helps a
remember,
lot.
yeah, when I first moved to Siena, I remember going into our local supermarket and they had organic prosecco and it was €5. But your friends in Australia, have they stayed in Australia or have they done quite a bit of traveling?
A lot of them have, I mean, it's yes and no, right? Almost all of them have done a version of the backpacking trip where they were here for
Yeah.
3 years. I think that what's, you know, hard and they all travel like, you know, around Australia or New Zealand and other
Yes.
places. Almost all of them still live. And I saw a beautiful photo actually today, one of my friends sent, because we have one of the beauties of the friends I have in Oz is that we just had this like unique time at university where someone
Mm,
connected to someone. So you could go to a party now of 50, 60 people and you'll see your best friend, but then they'll know someone that you just haven't seen in 10 years. And the
yes.
community is extraordinary. And I saw my friend sent a photo today of like 8 of them catching up. And I said, we've known each other for 32 years or, you know, 30 plus years. We all met at university. So some of them, one of
Yes.
them travels a lot like me and works in travel. Most of them are, you know, settled, married. They do their holidays, but, you know, it's so expensive that they come to Europe. It's like the big trip.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to Paris for the weekend. But I would say that for all my friends, my
Mm,
Spanish community is the same. A couple of them lived abroad when they were younger, but they've all settled down now and, you know,
mm,
building homes, raising families. And I think the difference is for me and Matt. I mean, Matt was very much a homebody, but my partner was that I traveled with Griff when he was younger. So I didn't stop that behavior because I had a child. We just had to
mm,
find different things to do. So he's traveled
yes.
a bit. So yeah, I'm considered the anomaly. And as my mother would always say, my feet never touch the ground. But I mean, I've worked in travel most of my career. I started at a Lonely Planet because it's very much, I get my energy from being on the road, right?
Yeah.
And I can do, you know, not fully no star, but I like the spectrum of like being in a hut one day and, you know, being able to, you know, go luxury the next. And so, and it gives me, I mean, I just love it, just going to a new country, city, space. It is experience, and you're right, you have to learn the life lessons to get there. I've always taken a lot of risks, if I'm honest, but actually now
Yeah.
the risks that I'm taking, and this has also weirdly taken a lot longer than I've always had a tension with my creative self. And one of my friends a couple of years ago, it's really odd. You're so confident in your professional self, but
Mm,
odd that you're not confident in your creative self because you're just as good. And which was kind of, when she said it, it was kind of derailing because I was like, oh, really? But actually, she was correct. But now I just take risks creatively that I would never have done before because no one cares. I used to
mm,
get so head up about sharing who I was creatively. And actually it's I mean, I studied, I was a photographer, but I buried it for such a long time. But to rediscover it in the last 4 or 5 years, again, in a very new way is amazing, because it's a very core part of who I am. And I don't shy about telling people that. Yes, it might be confusing for some people, because like, you're creative and you're commercial and you're professional. There are loads of people that are like that. I'm now inhabiting that identity more, which is great, because I'm also finally prepared to take the risks for my creative self more, because I'm confident. I think there's a beauty of age, that some of the things that I cared about when I was younger, and I watch some of my young friends do the same thing. I'm like, yeah, that won't matter in 10 years. Just don't worry about it. But you have to go through it.
You have to go through it, unfortunately, yes. But I just picking up on what you said. You said that it doesn't matter what you show because other people don't care. You know, you should do it anyway because you stop yourself. You know, we all kind of self-edit, don't we? We pull ourselves back from doing something because we think, well, how will that be received? Also, I think for a creative person, there comes a point where you have to do it for yourself, because you spend so much of your career where other people are trying to tell you what to do and they're shaping your creativity. And it comes a point where they have to do it for themselves. They have to put themselves out there that isn't edited for a client or for an agency. And I think you've really done that. I can see that with your photography.
You only came back to it 4 years ago. Again, the thing about that too is that actually people, when I say they don't care, they actually do care, because the amount of people that have come up to me and gone, I just didn't realize how creative you were, makes me feel more seen.
Yes,
because I had,
definitely,
you know, by my own choice, packed up my gear and put it away when I moved to the UK. I mean, I always took pictures, but I look at the pictures I took for that 10 years, they're awful. But I've kind of retrained myself, and my images are different. They're better. They're very connected to the same themes, but it's a view of the world that, yeah, like you say, like as a creative, actually I was getting sick, but actually I think I was getting sick because the creative self was buried for so long.
yes,
now
definitely.
it's much more in balance. And that is the thing I'm most happiest about, is that finally, after lots of iterating, the two are now sitting in harmony, where they were either anchoring too far one or the other way. They're now a little bit more in balance.
Yeah.
Which means also, it's to point, like knowing who I am and looking for this next chapter, even professionally, it's actually now, even though people in the regions, I don't really get it, it's really confusing. I think because I can articulate it finally, it's making sense to the people that matter. And it's also, therefore, unsurprisingly, becomes self-fulfilling, because then people just know you as that, know you as anything else. So it's cool that one minute you can be taking portraits and the next minute you could be talking, taxonomy and AI and then products in. So different, but they're connected. But yeah, I can talk different languages that way.
So let's go to our final question then, Mel. If you could go back in time to any of those moments that you've talked about, would you change what happened?
No, I would never change anything. Because I can't imagine, just, I know, like I wouldn't change.
So if you had your sliding door choice, you would say, no, I'm going to pick with what I chose the first time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I think that the only thing that I would change is putting myself in a position where I burn out so quickly. That's the only thing that I would improve upon. I would not want it to be any different. I just think some of the recovery and resilience. But yeah, I've been given many luxuries in terms of having that time that many people don't get.
I hear what you say, because I've burnt out a few times in my life. Sometimes from work, sometimes just from personal, just push myself always to the limit. And that's been my biggest lesson, to not do that. I think that's one great thing about having a child, especially a child on your own, because it takes all control away. And I've found that has been very transformational for me, because all control's gone, and I've moved into going with the flow, which I don't do naturally.
I 100% agree, but I think that the thing we forget as humans, and I did too, right? It's always like mind, body, spirit, and what burnout is both the body and the spirit going, hello, right? You're not caring about,
not listening.
not listening. And so actually it is your body. My kind of new things at the moment, I only care about two things. And one is my health and one is financial security. Once you have those two things, then you have choice. And my health could be all of it, mental, physical, but it does keep score, right? So whether it's emotional, it's work, it's stress, it actually manifests in the body. And,
Yes.
I'm in Thailand to kind of get that both spiritual and physiological aspect. So I'm very more like hyper aware of the body before the mind, because if the body goes, then everything else takes longer to recover. The body is actually probably more important than the mind in many ways, because if that is not working, the mind doesn't work. And so,
I see your body reflects everything that you're thinking and feeling. So I see that every symptom could be quite far down the line in the past is from a, negative thinking or from old bad emotions you haven't processed. And if you don't process it, eventually your body, because it just has no choice, it sort of stores it all. If you don't release it, then your body gets sick. You can also readdress that because they're all connected. You can redress it a number of different ways, can't you?
Yeah, but you have to invest in fixing it, right? You can't just do it through.
Oh, definitely. You have to. And you have to actually process what the thing was that caused the initial block of energy. And you have to process it because quite often it's something that you've denied or you've moved on very quickly from. And you have to process it. And then you've just got to let it go.
True, but you have to be also in a position where you have the luxury of time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've been privileged, right? For every time I've had burnout, I've had the ability to recover. That is not what everyone has, that choice. When those two things are in harmony, you have choice.
Yeah.
You have choice. If you needed to take 6 months off or et cetera, you can. But a lot of people don't have that capacity. So the burnout never actually stops. They just keep.
No, because they've got to keep on. They never get that time to work out what's happening.
I have been lucky in that context. But yeah, burnout, but I never want to do it again. Prefer not to.
I think you catch it quicker. My first real burnout was when I set up my company and I just was workaholic. And because I loved what I did. Everything was done extreme. I'd get up really, really early after partying all night and I'd be at the gym and then I'd work really long hours. And then even if it was really late, I'd still go out and meet a friend or something. So it was just in a continual cycle. So my first burnout was when I was in my early 30s. And like you, I was very lucky. I had the time and the money to be able to recover from it. But I never burnt out as badly as that again.
Yeah.
Because I said I never want to go to that place. You learn from it. So I think you've been through a really tough burnout. And I think you learn the early stages of it. My body starts to tell me very early on. Yeah. I might ignore it for a bit. Shut up. I haven't got time for that now. But then it does it a little bit louder. It does. Okay. Just, you have to listen now. So I go, okay, I have to listen. I have to deal with this. What's this telling me? But yeah, it's people who are in very difficult jobs where they don't have money and they don't have time. It's really hard. They've got to learn that on the hoof to be able to help themselves, to support themselves. Well, thank you very much. That was an amazing conversation. Thank you for being so open and honest. Where can people find you if they're interested in working with you or they want to see your photography? What's the best way?
LinkedIn or Instagram. I have a website and it's melmcveigh.com. All those paths will lead to me.
Okay, so I will put a link to your LinkedIn profile and to your Instagram. And then people can find you and interact with you and get involved with the wonderful world of Mel.
Thank you. It's an amazing conversation.